Gareth, my man, how are you? Gareth, you were there on Saturday at the Ovo Arena in Wembley. Let's get into the main event first. Dillian Whyte. Some people online thought the scorecards were maybe slightly controversial. A lot of people thought Franklin won. It was so difficult, me working and scoring it, but I thought Dillian maybe nicked it because of the last couple of rounds. How did you see it play out?
Yeah, last 3 rounds, I thought he really upped the tempo and he created the vigour that we should have seen earlier in the fight, frankly. He lacked vigour. I thought he was very one-paced. It was a very gruelling fight. It was one of those fights where, as you're watching it, you go, what round is this? It seems like a really long fight because there weren't dramatic bursts in there that we get in heavyweight fights or in elite level fights. I thought he just nicked it, probably 7-5. I was working as well. I was filing, 900 words right on deadline for the Sunday Telegraph with no table, and I was like really tapping away. And I thought he just did it. I thought he pipped it. I think you look at the punch stats afterwards. Let's talk about real time. In real time, I thought it was close.
Yeah.
But I think he took it away from Franklin in the last 3, where he did up the pace. I'm not sure about the peekaboo right stand right in front of his opponent's style. I thought Franklin was better than we were expecting him to be. He showed a good chin, great resilience, heart, desire, all those things in which his stock rose. But 8-4, if you saw one of the rounds, it wasn't that easy to score. But I think what Dillian did was he landed the heavier, more telling punches in the entire fight.
Yeah. I don't want to be too critical with regards to Dillian's performance, but I'm going to be. I will say this first. Look, first training camp with Buddy McGurk is coming off a knockout defeat. I mean, those things will play on your mind. And you can see that he was trying different things in there. As you say, that kind of crossover defense, which isn't really his style, but who knows, it could be something for the future. But that being said, it's been a long time since I've seen a very good Dillian Whyte performance, a very long time. Even the Povetkin win, I didn't think was actually that good a performance. It was more down to Povetkin, I think, being really bad on the night. And I was also, and I asked this to David Hay and Andy Lee in the studio. I was like, is Dillian Whyte still at the top table of heavyweight boxing? Like, is he still an elite heavyweight? And if the answer is yes, then he should run through Jermaine Franklin like a hot knife through butter today. And he didn't. So I don't want to then sort of backtrack and say, well, and give him excuses. I was looking at Jermaine Franklin. I was thinking, okay, what would Joyce do to Franklin?
Yeah.
What would AJ do?
Yeah.
What would even a Hrgovic do? What would a Daniel Dubois do? I heard about what Dubois did to him in sparring. What would those guys do to Franklin? I think they'd all put him on his backside. So I was actually disappointed with Dillian Whyte's performance. I think we needed to see more. He shouldn't be going life and death with what at best is a C-level heavyweight in Jermaine Franklin, and not the biggest heavyweight either. Yeah, I mean, on the night, Dillian Whyte looked like so much bigger than him.
Yeah, I agree. And Anthony Joshua sitting ringside, arriving on cue 20 minutes before for the Fabio Wardley Nathan Gorman fight, as the bell went for their first second of their first round. Joshua would have watched that with absolutely nothing to worry about
at all.
He wouldn't have been, and maybe that does herald Joshua against Whyte in 2023. Although it was very difficult to pick through the maze and the labyrinth that was put there on Saturday night from Eddie and Joshua about who was going to be next. It sounded like from both the promoter and Anthony Joshua, they were very much keeping their options open as to whether they would fight Dillian Whyte or not in 2023.
Yeah, it's strange because speaking to Eddie, and he, initially he said Dillian Whyte needs a really good performance to kind of warrant or to get the AJ fight. Obviously, we didn't see that, but I'm with you. If I'm AJ, I'm like, give me the fight.
Yeah,
I'll take that now that, you can sell it still. It's still Dillian Whyte, AJ. There's still animosity between the two, even though they touched gloves at the end of the fight, or at least AJ kind of spotted him. If I'm AJ, it's a bigger fight than Otto Wallin. It's almost a bit like the Fury situation when Fury's chosen Chisora when there could be tougher opponents. You choose Chisora because Chisora put bums on seats, and I feel like Dillian Whyte would do that as well. And I think AJ would, if the AJ that turned up against Usyk still there, that AJ knocks out Dillian Whyte. I think
Dillian wasn't evasive in any way. I mean, and Franklin decided he was going to sit back and counter, and it was very successful. Certainly up to about round 8, round 9. I mean, it was a very close fight to that point. It was a close fight in terms of what happened round by round, but yeah, it wasn't a statement. Put it that way. There wasn't a statement there on Saturday night.
No, there certainly wasn't. I mean, you mentioned that AJ was there, which was good to see. AJ doesn't seem to turn up to events that much anymore. It's very difficult to see AJ, but he was there. And you also mentioned that it's almost been a bit of, they either don't want to tell us what AJ's doing next, or they don't have an idea what AJ's doing next. And Shelley Finkel's come out and said, look, again, I feel like we're rewinding back to 4 years ago now, but Shelley Finkel said, we want the AJ fight. That's what we want. Obviously, Shelley Finkel, the manager of Deontay Wilder. Can you see that fight happening? Is it ever going to happen, or is it just talk now? Because it does seem as though it was all roads leading to Wilder versus Andy Ruiz.
Well, obviously, we know that Eddie Hearn did respond to Shelley Finkel on Monday. I think they spoke. He's revealed that. They've had a word. But again, I think Deontay Wilder at this point is a very dangerous opponent for Anthony Joshua, in my view. It's a great fight.
Yeah.
But I still, if Anthony Joshua didn't want the Tyson Fury fight and 35 million pounds for that, I think Deontay Wilder is equally as posing a problem for him at this stage, where he needs to come back and he needs to get confidence back and a knockout and all those things. I think he should fight Dillian Whyte in late March, and then look at either Deontay Wilder or Tyson Fury if that comes through later in the year. Deontay Wilder is a proposition for anyone.
Yes.
We know what Tyson Fury's done with him in 3 fights. He's been down 4 times in 3 fights, hasn't he? And he's had to really claw his way into a couple of those fights. Claw his way back in that first fight, the draw. I think Joe Joyce is a guy. I was talking about this with Tyson Fury's brother yesterday, Shane. We were talking about Joe Joyce. Is he potentially number 2 in the world right now?
Joe Joyce.
Yeah, I was having an argument with that about, because if he could take Deontay Wilder's punches, could Joe Joyce over 12 rounds really, not in terms of, obviously lost to Alexander Usyk in the amateurs, would he grind Usyk down over 12 rounds in a 12-round heavyweight fight in the professional ring? Maybe he would. Anyway, all these things point to is, what's good is the heavyweight division's back in focus. What I didn't like about Saturday night was Anthony Joshua doesn't do anything without a reason behind it. He was there for a reason. He arrived on cue. He was there with his people. He was there to watch Dillian. He fist bumped him on the ring apron, and there was a bit of a respect between the two men in that moment. But come and give us a statement afterwards. Come and put something out there. I do not understand the policy around it. I complain about this. I've been vilified for this at times, complaining that we don't have a sit-down lunch once a year with Anthony Joshua and catch up with him as a big media group when he's not preparing for a fight. It's important, and I say this as a media guy and a guy that works on radio and TV and in the newspapers. It's important to have those relationships, the big fighters with the media. It's just one of the fundamentals.
I agree. Look, I mean, I wasn't even able to get AJ in the DAZN studio.
No, exactly.
I mean, I wanted to ask him. I like, AJ, come to the studio. Talk. What next? Anything? Discuss. I mean, you're the biggest. I had to fight through security.
I behaved a little bit like an idiot at one point on Saturday night because I literally busted through security to get to one side to get a comment from AJ ringside while he was signing autographs and stuff. And all I wanted to know was, and I managed to get my line for my newspaper piece, doing my job, I hasten to add, was to say, is it going to be Dillian next then? And he said to me, why not? I don't need a warm-up fight, why not? And at least I got that. But I literally had to go into a zone where I couldn't go because I didn't have that shouldn't have been the case.
Yeah.
No, I know it sounds like I'm complaining.
No. Look, I've spoken to AJ's people. I've spoken to KD about this. I've spoken to the people around him. Like, he needs to be more accessible.
Yeah.
And I've said, like, even coming on talkSPORT, Fury jumps on talkSPORT all the time. Fury would just randomly ring up talkSPORT and get on. AJ
I know, he
needs
rang
to
me up
do
one
more.
day saying I need to get on on Simon Jordan and Jim White, right? Jim White and Simon Jordan right now. I've got something to say. I can't get... He was ringing the talkSPORT number for that you...
Yeah, he was calling reception.
He was
calling the reception. Yeah.
So I sent him their producer Luke's number. I know we're talking under the covers here, if you like, about how things happen, but I cannot believe that what you just told me. You were working studio for DAZN. He's got a contract with DAZN. Yeah,
he should have come on.
He should have just come on and just... Because people love him. People love him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it just works, right? It just works. It's a shame. Very quickly, before we wrap, I mean, there was a lot going on Saturday. One of the strangest things, I think, that happened was you were doing an interview with Kugan Cassius, IFL TV. I actually bumped into that interview as well. Dillian Whyte walks past you, and you ask him, does he have a shower before the fight? Explain it. What did you mean? Because it's obviously started to trend. I've seen memes. It's all over the place on TikTok. What did you actually mean?
Sometimes, and you know, it is, to explain it without seeming like a loon. Sometimes there have been boxers in the past, and there's MMA fighters that don't wash in fight week. They want to smell as they smell. Yeah. No. This is true. They don't want to be fresh, or they don't want to be scented when they fight. So I was just thinking, I haven't really asked anyone that as a question, and I haven't heard anyone else ask that. So and Dillian's a warrior, isn't he? He's a warrior. Yeah. So I wondered, and it's a bit like we ask fighters, female and male, if they have sex leading up to a fight.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So my thing was, I'd come up on the way in while I was driving in to Wembley on Saturday night. Thought, if I get a chance to speak to Dillian, I'm going to ask him, does he wash in the dressing room? Does he shower just before he goes out? And I thought Warrior Dillian might come up with a really weird answer. And my reason for doing it as well is that if you ask fighters, if you ask them different questions, if you take them to a different place, it opens a different side of their brain. In fact, I did it with David Adeleye at BT Sports Studios yesterday, and he said, no, I like to be nice and scented before I fight. I like a wash. I like my perfume on. But you'll get others who say, no, I want to smell when I go in there in the clinch. So I asked Tyson Fury about it.
You know, it made me laugh. Yeah. It was Dillian Whyte's reaction.
No, it was. Wasn't it?
Yeah, it looked like well, I just walked away.
I know, which you know. I mean, I am not really reading all the comments, but it's about it wasn't meant to be funny. It was anyway.
It was fantastic. As always, it was absolutely fantastic. All right, you're listening to Fight It Extra on talkSPORT 2. Still to come, we are going to be hearing from Chris Eubank Jr., who said he only needs to be 50% to beat Liam Smith. Remember, it was 60 to beat Conor Benn. We're also going to hear from Daniel Dubois ahead of his fight this weekend against Kevin Lerena from South Africa. But up next, we're getting stuck into Fury versus Chisora 3, which is live on talkSPORT this weekend.
Did that explain it?
It did. No, you know, it really did then. Because you're right, like, do you want to just be fresh? And I'm trying to think of it. As a fighter, I don't think I would be fresh. I don't think I'd have a shower.
Exactly. Yeah. But you might feel... But it's psychologically, it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't go a week deep, but I don't think I'd have a shower fresh before, like, you know. Yeah. I don't want to be fresh for my opponent.
Exactly. Dennis Andrews didn't wash for a week, I think.
But it's honestly, what makes it is Dillian Whyte's reaction.
Yeah, I know.
It's the best reaction ever.
Well, I'm glad you all found it funny. I mean,
I did.
It's horrible though when people, not horrible, but you know when you do something like that. I mean, I'm guilty of doing that kind of thing all the time.
Yes.
That
was fantastic.